Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello, I'm Paul Obitelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracies, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion, and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback, or maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com, or you can go to our website and contact us via the contact tab there. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and many other podcast directories out there. Well, thank you for tuning in again, everybody, wherever you may be, whenever it may be. It's mighty fine that you're here with me again for another edition of THA Talks. And we've got an interesting one as usual. If you remember the show I done with Jez Turner about the origins of fascism, and controversial show that stirred up lots of different opinions. And I did say that we like to keep both wings flying here on THA Talks with regards to free speech and so on. So I have been looking for a communist, a socialist to come on the show. And I found one. We're going to be speaking with Russ James from the Socialist Workers Party England. Now, I've said communists, I've said socialists. A lot of the time, a lot of these guys have a different perspective on it all, and maybe have a different description about themselves, and on both ends of the political spectrum. So maybe I should wait till Russ comes on the show to let us know exactly who and what he is politically himself. But it's I contacted him via word of mouth. And we actually started to do the show a few weeks back, but we had internet problems and we've managed to reschedule, and he'll be on in a short while. But before we go to the interview, we've got a familiar person that's actually going to come back on the show at this point in time. And again, I think I'll let the surge from a dramaturge all the way from the other side of London let us know what's been going on and what he's doing back here on THA Talks. Mr. Parry.
This generation rules the nation with version. Pass the duchy from the left-hand side. Pass the duchy from the left-hand side. Good evening to you, I missed out some lines there. Good evening to you, Mr. Obitelli. How are you?
Oh, that is brilliant. I haven't heard one of your songs for quite a while, Mr. Parry. I'm very well, thank you. It's brilliant to have you back on the show. How you been?
Well, I mean, don't forget, it wasn't a complete severance anyway. Yeah. The idea was that with my new duties as a bishop with two churches, I actually wouldn't have much time, with all love and respect to this wonderful project for THA.
Right, well, I mean, sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, carry on.
Well, I mean, where do I begin? It didn't work out between me personally and the other church, the non-Gnostic church, for a number of reasons. Does a leopard ever change its spots, Mr. Obitelli? Very sadly, I have to say, mainstream Christianity is still vindictive towards Gnosticism.
Right.
Therefore, I felt I had no option but to withdraw. I mean, I think the attitude was, let's get everybody inside and we'll teach you the error of your ways. Obviously, that is not what we've been told first off. Also, we're not really the ones in error. All we're trying to do is find gnosis. We're trying to find a deeper understanding with spirit, the universe, with each other. So I personally felt my position had been compromised and I had to withdraw. I said to the others who were coming in with me, this is what I've decided, but obviously, Gnosticism is all about discovering your own path. You make your own minds up. But it turned out in the end that nobody felt under the new views that we were given that anyone could go forward with it. But at least I've got some time back for THA. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, also freeing up your time, you're no longer with the Libertarian Party UK, are you?
Oh, that's more tactical. I mean, I started as a sort of a reasonably middle-leaning, left-leaning, sometimes right-leaning, depending on the mood. And I mean, I'm an anarchist, and I thought libertarianism was the best way to get that into mainstream politics, if that's the phrase I'm looking for. No, I mean, but that's simply because I felt they needed someone who could operate as press secretary a little more effectively than me, because it's not really, what I want to be doing with an election coming.
Yeah.
So no. I mean, I'll help them out, and I love them to bits, and we've got a very, very healthy relationship. Libertarians are hot and they're cool, and they've got really, really advanced ways of thinking. But I suppose recent churchy events made me go back to my roots, northern gnosis and anarchism. So, what have I been talking about, apart from those two things in various ways, for over 30 years? So I am home, Mr. Obertelli.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's this. I feel for you that it didn't work out for you. On a selfish note, it's great that you've now got the time to contribute to the show again. And the door was always open anyway, so we did say that. And I'm sure there'll be other times where things happen that we all get really busy on this show, and you'll be back and forth, but it's good to have you back. And we've actually got a political show for your welcome back on the show. And we are going to be venturing towards the left, as we promised we would after we had Jez Turner on the show. That was we've had a lot of alt-rights people on the show, and I've made no secret there's a lot about that movement which I do sympathise with and support a lot of what it's about. Don't agree with all of it, but a lot of it I do. So but at the same time, I think there's, within socialism, there's too many good ideas there to dismiss it. I've always said I like socialism as a really nice sauce. I don't really want it as a soup, but I think it makes a great sauce. This is going to be an interesting one, I think.
I love your imagery. Well, certainly, I mean, look, anarchists think all of this is awfully primitive anyway, right and left nonsense. We've all got to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You know me, Paul. I mean, I've got friends in both camps. I've got friends on both sides. And most of the time they're talking about different things anyway without realizing it. And, there's good in both sides. And, it's been my hope that this show can help encourage genuine discussion. And I think we're proving that this evening.
Let's go. Hi there, Russ. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be on there.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's you've come by word of mouth, and you're pretty much active. You're a part of the Socialist Workers Party England. Now, I mean, the word's obviously very well known, and I mean, politics at the moment in the modern world, I would say, is all over the place. It's a very political time, so to speak. Maybe because, I mean, some of our listeners are very clued up about politics. Some of them probably intrigued with this kind of stuff, but might not be as well researched on this stuff. So maybe we should start right from the ground up. And how's about you give us your actual perspective on what socialism is, how it compares to communism, and how that all compares to capitalism, and your general perspective on what it is, what socialism is, and what it seeks to achieve.
All right, so I'll start with an easy question then.
Yeah, and take your time with it.
Okay, well, basically, your difference between socialism and communism is a matter of detail, really. Because as socialists, our whole idea is to generate a society which is for the best of everybody. Now, the communists, they take that to a little stage further than we do, because the idea of communism is gradually that the state withers away into nothing, and it becomes effectively anarchism. But as socialists, we we don't believe that that is possible, because there's always going to be people who are going to exploit you. There's always going to be people who are going to take advantage of weakness. Now, if you don't have any state at all, then it's, power doesn't exist in a vacuum, does it? Somebody's going to come along and basically take it. Right. Which takes you back to square one, back to the system of exploitation and tyranny, dog eat dog, which is the essence of capitalism. Now, as I say right now, for the Socialist Workers Party England, we have our perspective is to build an authentic English and Welsh version of socialism, which is tied in for our own people. It's we borrow quite a lot from Stalin, the idea of socialism in one country, or Enver Hoxha as well. The principle is that, unlike your Trotskyites, who believe that you can have socialism across the whole world, the permanent revolution, no borders, we don't believe that's possible. We recognise that socialism is something which is for the good of the people, and borders are for the good of the people. If you have free countries, strong countries, they can work together. If you have no countries, it's a parasite's playground, really.
Right. So that's your perspective would be different to say something like, for example, you get the Antifa, these anarchists that want to sort of just bring everything down, break down the borders. Would you identify differently to that movement?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, because a lot of these people take their inspiration from Trotsky.
Yeah.
And Trotsky's idea was essentially that everything, if you smash everything down, then you can build from the ground up. Which, I mean, there is merit in that, but unfortunately, it's that sort of area has developed into the social justice warrior brigade, where they're smashing and smashing and smashing, and they've reached the point that they're smashing themselves as well. Of course, there are many things that have to be swept away, but you have to hold on to the foundations, because if you keep on breaking everything, you're going to be left with absolutely nothing, which is the situation we're heading towards right now, really.
Right. Well, I mean, we're obviously in a very political stage in the UK right now. We've got a snap general election that Theresa May called last week. I think it was kind of a surprise to most people, although it seems to be a political game going on at the moment. You can't really find it. Don't really know where everyone's head's at. I mean, what's your perspective on it? And will you guys be supporting Corbyn, or are you you're not a supporter of Corbyn?
No, that's a very good question, that. Now, I think we were as very much as surprised as everybody else with the snap general election being called, because it seemed to make no sense at all. And the initial reaction was really, is this Theresa May's way of throwing the Conservative government, ending Brexit, handing over power to like a Liberal Labour coalition so that Brexit can be stopped. And then we had a look at the way that Jeremy Corbyn has been, he said that, yes, Brexit will go forward. And then he's bringing in all sorts of really quite bizarre policies, which are vote losers. So it does look like the mandate is pretty much an agreed consensus to get a Conservative majority. Now, so a massive Conservative majority would, Theresa May said that she wants to make Britain into a global Britain, which is going to be brilliant for the capitalists. No workers' rights, absolute freedom of movement on any criteria that the Conservatives want to make it on. So there's going to be no, how would you say it? There's going to be no protection for the indigenous people. There's going to be no protection for the working class whatsoever. It's going to be an absolute free-for-all for the corporations. We're going to see the NHS is going to be privatised completely. That's just going to cease to exist. It's a very bad time for us, really. And the way that Jeremy Corbyn, he's not offering leadership. He's going to lose the election. It's a golden opportunity for a socialist alternative to be put forward, and he's just thrown it away.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me. I mean, I've been quite supportive of the alt-right movements that have sprung up. I think that's quite a broad term anyway, that word, but it's that sort of movements. Part of the reason, I wouldn't say personally I wouldn't say that I'm strictly right-winged in terms of economical, in the economical side of things. I think sometimes I feel the state's got so big that it's got dangerous, and I look at socialism, I think, is that really a solution? But at the same time, I think that socialism, it's got a lot of common sense to it. It's got a lot of solutions there, and it seems to be at the moment, like with people like Corbyn, one side. I mean, especially the way a lot of things, like the way he doesn't want to fight Russia and he doesn't want to do all this kind of very politically correct things that a lot of the establishment want. At the same time, he just seems to be quite. I don't feel the country's safe with him, because sometimes it's like he doesn't even care about the country. He just cares about this globalist ideology that we're all in the same boat, so let's just all create one boat and we'll all be happy, kind of thing. I just sense a bit of danger in that. And what are your views on that?
Well, yeah, because Jeremy Corbyn, he's coming from the sort of the democratic socialist position, where they don't want to have a revolution. They just want to basically fix things and make things nice. It's a very very liberal perspective, really. Liberal with a small L. The way that he's going, he's definitely he's an open borders activist. He's been over at Calais saying we should have all of the refugees come in, no vetting whatsoever. It's our duty to bring them in. And, well, it is not our duty to not vet people, obviously. We do have room to take people, and there's plenty of room in this country. But we have to be very sensible about it. Who we bring in, be careful that we don't bring in the wrong type of people. But, he's definitely following the path of globalism, very much like the Conservative Party as well. So it's you have a choice on the Labour side. You have open borders, open free for all for everybody. On the Conservative side, you have open borders for business. So it's lose-lose all the way, whichever people you vote for.
I mean, what would you say? Do you feel that your version of socialism and what you do is the authentic version of what, if people want to support socialism, you're projecting what the authentic side of it, and that maybe liberalism at the moment, social justice warrior culture, if you like, this stuff is is it sprung? Because it seems to me that's just sprung very quickly from nowhere. I mean, it's always been there a little bit, but it's just got outraged over the last 10 years that you can't even talk about race without being called a racist. Words like xenophobe, which I don't remember hearing that word nearly as much as when I was growing up, and I do the last 5 years or so. It just seems this avalanche of it. Does it come from the left? Do you find it's coming from the left? Maybe somewhere something's happened that it's spun it off, or do you think it's something else and it's kind of sort of giving the left a bad name, if you like, at the moment? Or am I completely wrong?
Well, I think people like ourselves, well, yeah, it definitely does appear to be coming from the left. But you've got people like the Socialist Labour Party, the Communist Party of Great Britain, ourselves, are all parties. All of there's this illusion that the left was for the European Union. It was fascists and the right wing who were for Brexit, but it was the Brexit thing was globalists against anti-globalists, and the authentic left is anti-globalist. Of course, it is. You have Trotskyites who believe in open borders and just this nice big one world, the dictatorship of the proletariat for everyone instantly. But it's unrealistic, really. The authentic left believes in borders. You have to have socialism one country at a time. Each country has to have its own version of socialism, and it works together as a federation of equals. But the left is, because of this Trotskyite infiltration, really, it's become a bit of a problem. You've got identity politics creeping in absolutely everywhere. This idea that how you feel is the most important thing in the world. Socialism is about what's good for everybody. It's about what's good for the country. It's centred essentially on what's good for the working class. There's only two classes of people. There's the working class and there's the ruling class. Everybody who is not a ruler, everybody who's not one of the exploiters, is working class. It doesn't matter whether you're a high-powered manager, in a, I don't know, working for Daimler or something like that, or you're sweeping the floor somewhere. It doesn't matter. If you're not one of the owners, you're not one of the exploiters, you are working class. And that is the most important form of identity there is, really. Now, all of this feminism, now, of course, it is important that women are treated with respect and are, given well, not given rights. They have rights, don't they? It's important that women are treated properly. But the feminists they're not so much for women as anti-men, and we see a lot of real nonsense with like the feminist lobby pushing for, the right to wear the burqa, for example, which is it's just downright bizarre.
It's almost like spite.
It does give us a very bad name.
Yeah, it's like spite, isn't it? It's like spite at Western tradition. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're getting a little bit of delay, I think, which is confusing things, just so listeners bear with us on that one.
Yeah, because you've got your social justice warriors. They seem to have this idea that they have the right to protect everybody and defend everybody, and everybody is weak. Everybody needs their defence. It's a very arrogant attitude and a very patronising one, which the left in general is getting tarred with, and really has no place in the left whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that it's become that the right and the left have both actually been pushed further out. So it's like if anything that's generally right-winged is perceived as far right, and anything that's generally left-winged is perceived as far left. And it seems like the globalist central position is just dominating and taking everything away from its traditional. Do you think that you sense like an alt left rising up as well? Like we've got the alt right that's becoming quite big at the moment. Do you see that the alt left there's a movement that could happen?
Well, it's something which would be good. I mean, certainly we are our own organisation. We're in contact with different parties at the left, and there is an idea to form some sort of traditional left unity. But it's the same with the parties on the left as with the parties on the right. That everybody, there's lots of different steering committees, there's lots of different leaderships, and trying to get people to work together, it's not the easiest trick in the book. I don't suppose it matters whether it's left wing or right wing. You get people who build up their organisations, and there's this sense of ideological purity, and there's. For some people, if you're looking as an outsider looking at the right, there seems to be such disarray in the right wing, with all these little rival factions appearing and poaching each other. And unfortunately, it's the same on the left as well. There's a lot of people that they'll go through the Socialist Workers Party, become totally disillusioned, jack it in, go looking elsewhere, go to Socialist Labour, for example. Some of them will make their way to our ranks as well, or go to the Communist Party of Great Britain. That trying to actually form meaningful alliances and build up an alt-left, if you like, is quite difficult. But it is something that is in progress. There is conversation going on between certain sections of the left, so you never know. It is a possibility.
Well, the internet certainly helps nowadays. I think if we didn't have the internet, then those globalists would be nailing it. So I'm praying that they don't learn to police the internet too much, because otherwise, then I think it really will be difficult. But I can sense that Mr. Parry is dying to get into this one. So David, come on in.
I hate to start as an open contrarian, but I'm not dying to get into it at all. I'm actually listening very interested. Let me explain to everybody before I go on. Paul is one of my best friends in the world. We do not always see eye to eye on politics. I tend to come from anarchist roots, and certainly when I'm active in politics, that tends to manifest as libertarianism, sort of left-leaning libertarianism. And until recently, I was press secretary of the Libertarian Party, but since there's a bloody election coming, I had to actually put that task to sort of young, eager beavers who could deal with it more quickly. Gosh, my dear young friend. When I was at university, there was a joke going around that none of us were in the correct tax bracket to join the Socialist Workers Party. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I'm from the Socialist Workers Party England, which is it is a party of the working class. There's all of the members are working. Most of us are working several jobs just to make ends meet. The Socialist Workers Party, the SWPE, without the end of it, it does seem to be full of middle class students. The hip hip hooray champagne socialist brigade go through university, pretend to be rebels, like, oh yes, we're going to fight for the working class, because they need us to fight for them because they're so stupid to fight for themselves. Very patronising social justice warrior types. And then, of course, they leave university, they'll become stockbrokers, work in banks, become the oppressors that they warn us against. So, so yeah, I would agree that that joke about you need to be in a high income bracket, yeah, it certainly does appear to be the truth.
I mean, I promise that was tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't an attack, but it did seem to hold water at the time. I mean, I'm probably a lot more sympathetic to leftist tendencies than Paul, even though I don't like speaking for Paul. I suppose, yes, I'm a rampant and shameless idealist. What can I say? After reading people like Proudhon and reading people like Max Stirner, I began to feel that left and right was incredibly primitive as a view. And why can't we aim for the promised land, the utopian withering away of the state? I mean, what on earth is so wrong with that? I mean, surely it's based on the premise that people aren't irredeemably wicked and selfish, and that we actually can all cooperate, in small ways now under the oppression of elites that really don't care about anything apart from themselves. But, as those elites weaken, which hopefully they will, why can't cooperation become genuinely universal? I mean, I don't see necessarily why that's so idealistic and utopian.
Well, no, that's I quite agree with you. It is an ideal. And one of the best books that I've read myself personally is Peter Kropotkin, Conquest of Bread, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an absolutely fantastic book explaining it.
Yeah, I mean, mutual aid has practically biblical status for me too.
Yeah, I mean, it describes the situation. It basically explains that we can break down the barriers, we can wither back the state, we can live in an anarchist utopia, but it leaves out one very important detail, that there are people with the sort of the gangster mentality, the greed, and I do suspect that it is, for a minority of people, it is a natural instinct to want to be in charge of everything, to want to have more than their fair share. And unfortunately, as long as these people exist, there's going to have to be some defence against them, which is a socialist state.
I mean,
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Sorry, I was going to say the socialist state that we envisage is going to be, it's not going to be a monolithic, bureaucratic dictatorship. It will be, it's pushed back to the smallest possible level. Obviously, as getting as close to the ideal of communism and even anarchism as it is possible, but there will have to be some level of a state to stop people rising up and exploiting us.
Right. So how do we get towards that sort of socialist state whereby we're actually making genuine collective progress? I mean, how does one achieve that? Is it simply the day-to-day mechanics of politics, winning elections, local elections, national elections, or is there something else to it as well?
Well, I think at the moment, fighting national elections is complete time and a waste of money as well. It's quite interesting that in little Timmy Farron's constituency, somebody's raised the deposit to put a fish finger up against him. And really, the fish finger and Timmy Farron, there's as much sense in both of them, isn't there?
I'm sure the fish finger will do much better than him.
I certainly hope so. If I lived in that area, I would vote for that fish finger.
Well, we'd both be voting for the fish finger. Oh gosh. I mean, I like revolutionary politics. I think we need a lot more of it these days. We're meant to live in a new hedonism. I can't see that. I see lots of distracted people, not lots of people living in joy or happiness. Do you think that Trotsky and people like Antonio Gramsci really need to be revisited, or have they had their day?
Well, I think it is an interesting point, because it's, when you look at Trotsky, you can see that his idea of permanent revolution, it does make a lot of sense, because you have to, if you have an end point to the revolution, then what's to stop you from backsliding into capitalism? You have to always be on the ball. But I think it's the way that Trotsky's been interpreted, really, which is the problem. So, Trotsky's description of how to actually bring about a revolution, the vanguard principle, there's a lot of, even though we're not Trotskyites ourselves, we do tip our hat to, and there is a lot of importance in Trotskyite works. So I think, revisiting with an eye to the current situation, to the current global situation, because obviously when he was writing, the start of the last century, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And things have changed a lot. The dictatorship of the proletariat was supposed to be, the USSR was supposed to be the springboard for everything. And of course that was infiltrated. People like Nikita Khrushchev betrayed the revolution. Stalin's been vilified. Things did not progress as they were supposed to. But, just because things didn't go the way that we would have hoped, like people, our socialist forebears would have expected it to go, doesn't mean that the message is wrong. It doesn't mean that the ideology is wrong. It just means it has to be looked at through the lens of, the modern days.
Mm. I mean, would you say there's a central theoretician for the Socialist Workers Movement?
A central one? Well, not really as such, no. I mean, you've got Marx, haven't you?
Yeah.
Obviously, because he describes the situation perfectly. But the problem with Marx is, although he describes the contradictions in capitalism and the inevitability of the system imploding, he doesn't really explain what's going to be done about it.
Mm.
It's all well and good saying, yes, there's going to be mass unemployment, there's going to be goods stacked up that nobody can afford to buy, so the system will collapse. But what do you put in its place? Now, that's where we come through. There are people like William Morris, the English socialists. I think the thing with socialism is you have to have a look at every possible theoretician and see how it can be welded together, really.
I mean, I remember years back going to an Antonio Gramsci, years back going to an Antonio Gramsci open day, that was the tongue twister there, held at one of the London universities. And the opening, I mean, there was an old actor playing Antonio Gramsci, rather well, actually, if I remember correctly. Beatrice Campbell was there, the usual crowd, the usual suspects. And I remember thinking, this is very inspiring. There's something to Eurocommunism. It's new, it's energized. But the whole day rapidly devolved into a massive argument in every room between committed socialists. And I ended up thinking, these people are going to get absolutely nowhere because they couldn't get past first base with each other. So, I mean, my own experience of socialism, and this is said with respect, tends to be, a great deal of faction fighting, but not real concentration on the larger issues. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, yeah, that's a problem that our own organisation has suffered with. We had a policy of letting anybody come in with, regardless of their religious views. And we found that then we had a Christian socialist wing set up who were more preoccupied with basically trying to say, oh, the Bible says this, the Bible says that, and to take us down the road of, we must be good socialists because it's the way of getting into heaven. And that did not sit well. So, of course, then that faction, if you like, ended up splitting off and forming its own organisation. And that just within our own little group, there is factionalism is a major problem. And, of course, it is important to have ideological purity. But if you can keep your ideology pure, but you end up losing the cause, it's not the best way to be going, really, is it? We do need cooperation. We do need the different strands of thought to come together, definitely.
I mean, one of the accusations of the anarchists at the First International towards the communists was that their version of revolution always necessitated yet one more murder And I've always thought that was a very telling. I mean, obviously, again, that was a tongue-in-cheek comment. But bearing in mind it was at the First International, it can't really be swept under the carpet. And that was an anarchist/libertarian perception of certain parts of the working class revolutionary cause. I mean, that's always sat uneasily with me. I mean, what's your own view of that?
Well, yeah, I would have to rather harshly quote Lenin. So you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Now, it is perhaps say was it Mikhail Bakunin, the one murder ahead?
Oh my God! I thought, yeah, yes, of course it was.
Yeah, there is. Of course, nobody wants to have blood running down the streets or anything like that. And there's this idea that we'll all take to the barricades and it'll be October Revolution all over again. It's if you're going to have a revolution, then there will be casualties. There's going to have to be. I mean, obviously, you've got to be. How can I say this without inviting MI5 to kick the door in? You say you're inciting revolution. You're saying we should be chopping the monarchy's head off. No, I'm not. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not inciting people to go out and kill anybody. But there will be, in a revolution, there will be resistance, because there will be the exploiters, there will be the capitalist ruling class. Will, of course, they're not going to. If you say to them, please, would you give up all of your riches, redistribute the wealth to the people who deserve it, stop exploiting people, and then go off and live on an island somewhere and leave us in peace? It isn't going to happen. So the idea that the revolution, there's going to be another murder. Well, yeah, there are going to be more murders, but it's not really going to be us murdering them in an act of aggression. It'll be in an act of self-defense, because they're right now. Look at what they're doing in Syria. Look at what they're doing in Iraq, in Libya. They are murdering millions of people across the globe as we speak. So it is quite harsh to say that. Yes, there will be casualties in a revolutionary situation, but I think the situation we're in now, we are being destroyed the world over. The global ruling class is grabbing power absolutely everywhere, and they're threatening us with world war. The situation in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, with false Korea at the south being mobilised to attack that free country. The situation in Syria, this. The idea, as you say, there is going to be one more murder towards the next step of the revolution. There's already been millions of murders right now, so be it.
Gosh,
without inciting people.
No, don't worry. I'm sure we've all got files by this stage. I just think that's taken us red. Before I get pulled back in, I'm a globalist. I'm just not this type of globalist. I mean, surely one is a caveman not to think that, some type of vast international arrangement can be made between people of goodwill. I can't see that as in any way, shape or form wrong. Obviously, that is not what the globalist agenda, as it is at the moment, is aiming for. Surely, as an ideal, let's keep to that, as an ideal, some type of vast international cooperation at some future time is a wonderful goal to aim for. What do you think of that?
Well, I'd have to agree with you. As an end goal, very far off in the distant future, why not? But I would say that I'd class myself as an internationalist rather than a globalist, because there is a distinction, really. An internationalist believes that there have to be nations. You cannot have internationalism without nations. It's pretty much taken as read, really, isn't it?
We need you back to have a whole show on the word nationalism. I mean, it's being used in so many ways at the minute. No, I agree. I mean, I want the state to wither away, and I want nations to wither away. But I think we're looking at a very far distant moment in time, sadly.
Oh yeah, I mean, there will be a point in the future when. Hopefully when we've established socialism in one country, in every country in the world, then, like what socialism a country at a time, once we've got a massive federation of equally cooperating free countries, then at that point, because the problem with the capitalist system is as long as you've got one capitalist country, just one, that's all you need, then nobody else in the world is safe. You have to have, every single country has to become socialist. But each country is going to have its own model. Each country is going to want to preserve its culture. It's going to want to look after its own people, which, of course, is as it should be. Now, once the countries have settled down and there's no need for mass migration from one country to another, when you haven't got capitalist wars destroying entire continents and forcing people out, basically to survive. Once you've got a free socialist world of independent socialist countries, then you can start whittling the borders away, breaking them down, and building a true socialist global state, or even a socialist global world without a state. But I think that's going to take a long time. It's a decent ideal, certainly. I think it's the end goal that we share, really, but it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Oh, a sad thought, but some wonderful sentiments there. Paul, my dear, I sense your teeth grinding. What do you have to say about all of this?
No, again, it was interesting listening to it and stuff. I always say, on the globalism side of things, for me, there's too much difference in people. And I'm not talking, I think, trade-wise and whether it's socialism or not socialism. It's trade-wise and just cooperation, absolutely. We've got internet, there's so much technology, travel is so much quicker and easier now. So globalism is inevitable to a certain degree. I just think there's so many different cultures and different people, surely for me, the way to make people happy is just to make all of those cultures, all of those homes thrive and as great as possible. And then, to be honest, I don't think people will want it as much anyway. I just think it's kind of, there's so much disbalance. A lot of people move to the West, not because they love the West, because it's so awful where they're coming from. So it's a false reason to go to the West, not because you think, I love London, I love England. It's more like, I love it here because it's so terrible where I come from. So that's my views on that. And I thought that I was just chuck that out there because and when David brought it up. But obviously, I'd like to hear your views. And again, this is kind of staying on the globalism thing, because I think the EU very much is a globalism machine. That's just basically the first step to take us to this utopia, which I'm pretty sure isn't the one that you want either. But what's your view on the EU and the whole situation with that at the moment, and Brexit and so on?
No, the EU is an absolute disaster. It was set up for the benefit of private corporations, and we were lied to it every step of the way. So it was the European Coal and Steel Corporation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which was just going to be an association between Germany and France, just so that they could trade coal and steel, and it'd be a nice open market. And then it was added to piecemeal and became the European Economic Area, just again a free trade area. Next thing you know, we've got a national anthem, we've got a currency, we've got a flag, we've got a parliament, one in Strasbourg, one in Brussels, we've got a commission. All of a sudden there's this state. There it is. And one of the most important things when you consider the European Union is that they have this ethos of competition and free trade. Sounds nice. Well, it does, doesn't it? It says, you can trade with everybody can have a fair share. Who could object to that? Until you look into the details. You're not allowed to nationalise anything. If anything's been privatised, you're not allowed to renationalise it. You're not allowed to have state ownership of anything, because it goes against competition rules. The NHS, for example, that will, if we stayed within the European Union, that would have been wiped out, would have been privatised. Where we have a car industry that's dead, a steel industry which is on its knees. All of these industries were basically destroyed by Margaret Thatcher, who was allegedly an anti-European Union fanatic, but she did the bidding of them just the same. Pretty much as Donald Trump is this "Make America Great" fella, who, when you look at what he's doing to America, he's just a continuation of Obama. He's Hillary Clinton with a wig.
Unfortunately, it's looking that way, yeah.
Now, the Brexit thing, it's quite an interesting one, because did we need to get out of the European Union? Yes, of course we did, certainly. The European Union is an absolute disaster. But what Theresa May wants to put in its place is this global Britain, as she keeps on saying again and again. which is going to be a free-for-all academic. The NHS is going to be got rid of. It's going to be destroyed anyway. If we'd stayed in the European Union, it would have been whittled away over time. Now that we're getting out of the European Union, it's probably going to go even faster. It's a difficult situation. Definitely voting to get out of the EU was the right thing to do, but it's what we do with Brexit. If we let the politicians take us down this World Trade Organization, free trade with everybody route, we're in, if anything, we're in an even worse boat than where we were before. It's a worse situation than it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I find it quite eerie when you hear people like Theresa May, and it's a lot of these politicians around Europe, they say, a society for all. Now, obviously, when you're thinking within a society, all different types of people in society, it's healthy to have a government that looks after everyone. But there's this kind of afterthought that I have whenever I hear them say it, that they're actually meaning it's for all, as in this is globalism. This Britain will be a globalist state. It's no longer for Britain or for this. And that's what worries me. And I just think with the EU at the moment, and I mean, whether you're on the right or the left, any like parties like what Le Pen's doing, and I think the guy Gert in Holland and stuff, where they're just missing out. I mean, I personally, even if it was as I said earlier, even if there was a socialist candidate that was just very nationalistic, respecting England, respecting France, respecting what it is, and seeking to maintain the way they are, I wouldn't be too. I'd vote for them if they were looking pretty strong. I wouldn't. And I think a lot of people on the alt-right, they're pretty much the same. I think you could probably persuade a lot of people on the alt-right to vote for the Bernie Sanders or the Corbyns if they weren't just a part of this globalist type of stuff. So, I mean, do you see that maybe someone from the left can actually make a lot of ground in the political spectrum and do that and maybe win a lot of support from people that are kind of moving to the right, because it seems to be having a lot of momentum at the moment? Can you see that happen, on someone on the left leading that?
Well, that's, I mean, ideally that would be what would happen, but the problem with the politics of the left, as it's put, is we have a lot of people are paranoid about communists they're all globalists, they're all going to sell us down the river, no borders. There is this myth that socialism is anti-national, and that capitalism is the way forward. And if the parties on the right will defend us from globalization, and the parties on the left would lead us into it. Yeah. When you look at it, capitalism, it needs mass migration. As the population gets older, it needs new people to come in. It needs more producers, it needs more consumers. Capitalism needs a booming population. It needs mass migration. Capitalism will not stand anybody having loyalty to a country, or to a class, or to anything. It will not stand anybody having loyalty to a culture. This idea of multiculturalism is basically, it's a big lie, really. There is no such thing as multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the destruction of culture, and globalization is the destruction of nations. You need to have free nations that are culturally sound, that are free, strong countries that are for their own people. And that's what socialism in its real sense is all about. Socialism, as the way I see it, is in defense of borders. If you allow people to trade willy-nilly, you'll have the situation where American corporations come in and buy up your railways, buy up the docks, buy up everything. Chinese corporations buy your nuclear power stations, all the things that are going on now. The only defence against that is closed borders and an end to free trade. Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, no,
I might have gone off on a bit of a tangent.
No, absolutely. That was great. That was great. It's to be honest, I was kind of listening to you there, and we're in such a mess at the moment. Politically, I've become so much more political over the last few years. Well, I'm at that age, I guess, and you start to think about the future more of the next generation and so on. But the only thing I think it's good that there's people on both sides, on the left, on the right, that are genuinely. I think that's the main thing with me. I mean, my political allegiance to the left or right isn't really as strong as my rejection of the, in commons, this globalist agenda, the one that David, who's got a positive vision for globalism, can see there's this something not nice about it, something that's not genuine, and something people don't feel good with. I mean, we could probably get you on the show and go on for another 2 hours because it's a really interesting talk, and we're getting towards that time. I'd just like, before I hand you back to David to see if he can got anything else he'd like to say. One thing a lot of people will point at, and they'll say when we talk about socialism, they'll point at places like, at the moment, Venezuela, which seems to be a lot of dusting it under the mat. You know, there's a lot of poverty out there, a lot of suffering going on, and you know, it's we won't really talk about that. Why is that happening? Do you think there's a distinct reason why that's happening, or does socialism, is it you've just got to be very careful with it? You know, sometimes it can go wrong.
Well, when you look at Venezuela, that's a very good example. When Hugo Chavez was running the place, it was the infrastructure was getting built. There was a good welfare system. There was a good healthcare system. The country was doing really, really well. He was a very popular leader. Now, when he passed away, the opportunity was taken, the parasites moved in, and the capitalists from the outside of the country put pressure on the ones on the inside, put pressure on, and they basically destroyed him. I think Venezuela was a beacon. It was an example, very much like Libya under Colonel Gaddafi. It was a country which was moving forward progressively. It was putting forward good ideas. It was looking after its own people, and the global system will not tolerate any country stepping out of line and showing that there is an alternative to the global system. So what's happening in Venezuela, it's not a failure of socialism, it's the fact that the socialist system has been attacked from outside and from inside. It's basically been crippled. The country, and especially the people of the country, have been punished for wanting to have their own way. Right. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, so Venezuela is a good example to look at, but it's not an example of socialism failing. It's an example of socialism being attacked.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Well, just like we've been getting these problems, these delays. I think we've had a bit of delay. So sorry to listeners if there's been a bit of stuttering and a bit of time lapsing going on. But just in case it's weirding them out. But David, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this one up?
It's certainly weirding me out. This is where I lose my knighthood, I assume. I mean, the best Socialist Workers headline I came across years back was with the passing of the Queen Mother, which said, "Aging parasite finally dies," which I couldn't resist laughing at. So there, that's my knighthood gone. Yes, oh gosh, everyone, I'm an optimist, but not about the immediate future and what's happening now. We'll all live in a scientific garden of paradise one day, I've no doubt of that. But every time I think about the recent American election between a crook and a con man, it's hard to work out which one was which half of the time. I mean, whatever happened, and this is me being shamelessly idealistic, whatever happened to people of substance in political life, and why do you think we're suffering from such a scarcity of those individuals nowadays?
No, I think you just have to have a look at the, in the UK, you have to look at the party system, don't you? You've got the Tories, the Liberals and the Labour Party in the UK as a whole. SNP, Plaid Cymru, if you want to go outside of England. They take the candidates, if you join the party, you have to be completely vetted. Then you have to be approved before you even get the opportunity to stand as an MP. Now, at that stage, that is the perfect opportunity to make sure that anybody with any independence of thought, with any ideas at all that would be good for the people but not for the party, make sure they don't get in. Now, there was the Liberal Democrat candidate, I can't remember his name now, David, what was his name? The one that they've just... Tim Farron has sacked him and said he will not be allowed to stand as a candidate for the... Because the great crime that he did was say that there is the Israeli lobby is too powerful in this country, and it dictates who can stand for Parliament. It dictates who can has the power. Mm-hmm. And he stated this is a problem. Lo and behold, he's been classed as an anti-Semite. And at the behest of the Israeli lobby, he's been sacked, which pretty much proves his point. He called upon action to be taken to defend the people of Palestine from the occupation regime. He stated that Israel is an apartheid state, which it is. He stated that the Israeli Defense Force are guilty of war crimes, which they are. He never said anything about the Jewish people at all. He didn't say anything that was anti-Semitic at all. He just criticised the Israeli regime. And for this, he has been sacked and vilified in the media and called, he's practically been called a neo-Nazi, really, for it. Now, that is the level of control that we've got, that this man wasn't even, he was stopped from standing. Now, if you imagine that that's the level of control you've got at that very level, once you actually get a position as MP, if you want to progress up the organisation, you've got to really toe the line. You've got to lick the boots of the right people. The corruption is through, it's so thorough at every single level that the only people who survive in it are the scum of the earth, really. And, until that situation changes, there isn't going to be, there's never going to be any decent people to vote for in the main parties. I suppose the last one we had was probably Tony Benn.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, a legend.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, my friend, if ever I get to meet you physically, I can promise you a hug and a handshake and a fine glass of wine. Paul, that's me done. Nice. Well, I'll hold you to that. Be careful. Paul, that's me done for this evening, my dear.
Oh, well, very nice to talk to you. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely one for the Extremist Club, I think, that one. Get Russ to speak at our Extremist Club in London. If you're about London, I'm sure that'll be a great evening. It's just like a social talk. You get to speak with a few of the others, and it's all very groovy. But yeah, Russ, it's been brilliant having you on the show, and it'll be great to have you back on. Perhaps once the election's over and there's more gossip to talk about, and once Trump's bombed some more people in the Middle East and pissed all the alt-right off even more, there'll be lots more to talk about and stuff. So I appreciate your time, and good luck with things. And I will say, actually, sorry, is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know about before you go? Anything you'd like to let any events coming up or any contact information?
Well, the contact information, if you go onto the websites, that's Socialist Workers Party England.blogspot.com, or if you email the main contact address, Socialist Workers Party England @gmail.com, pretty straightforward stuff. No, anybody wants to get in touch, if anybody wants to come and join us and fight the good fight, then please do.
Great.
We did have some events planned for May, but obviously the election has thrown everything up in the air. So it's a case of watch this space, see what happens, and we will regroup. And obviously strategies have to be adapted to the moment. So we're in flux at the moment. But we are active. So come and join us.
Right, great. Okay, well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to the next time.
Thank you very much.
And that was Russ James from the Socialist Workers Party England. Apologies for some of the connection issues we had there. There was a bit of a delay going on, which was throwing us a little bit. You may have picked up on some of that, and I've done a little bit of snipping and editing to sort some of it out. But we got there in the end, and we enjoyed the interview. And I think, well, David, that was another good one, wasn't it?
Well, we're rather back on form, aren't we? I mean, I rather enjoyed that. A very fine, principled young man who believes, in a better world, in a better future. My God, we need more of that nowadays.
Yeah, and it's important to remember as well, a lot of the stuff that's out there that we call it lefty social justice warriors. I mean, it does seem to come from that tradition, that kind of area, so to speak, but I don't think it really represents what a lot of these ideas are about. Love them or hate them. I think if we can get to a stage again where you have right-wing common sense and left-wing common sense, it can only be better for everyone, really. But so it is nice to kind of pull it together as it should and sieve out some of the Antifa lunatic kind of vibes, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think part of the problem is the media. I mean, it focuses on the, what are these young guys dressed in their black uniforms up to? Young, bored guys on a Saturday afternoon looking for a ruck. I mean, are they really there for political principle, or are they there to have a bit of fun and maybe get their face on the box? But the media loves all that. It feeds on it. We've got to be very careful of boulderizing serious political views with the wrong type of impression. I mean, that concerns me a lot. You know, I know you're a great fan of the internet, and so am I, but there's a price one pays for that sort of uncensored, dare I say it, that sort of unedited, which is a more appropriate word, access to information.
Yeah,
you know, we need more young men like him saying, hang on. You know, this is only part of the picture. These are serious ideas. And by the way, we all need to sit down and have a proper chinwag if any of us are going to have a future at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, we've said it many times. This show is about free speech and expression, which is exactly why I have no interest in having someone from Antifa to come on the show, because I don't really. I've seen them try to do interviews, and they've got no intellect, no real ideology where they come from. They're just, I don't know. It's just something that's gone very wrong in society. But if there's anyone that wants to come along and have a political talk, respect free speech, free expression, different opinions, that's what this show's all about. So I'd say the only group that I wouldn't, and I guess I wouldn't not have them on. I'd have Antifa on, but it's the only show where I probably really wouldn't keep myself composed and feel that I've got to let them express themselves. I'd probably take more pleasure in laying into them, to be honest. What about you?
I'm venerable nowadays. I don't lay into people. I've turned into one of your posh anarchists. I can't believe I use one of my own forbidden words, censored. There's no room for censorship. However, editing, in other words, to either the lack of it, if it's going to be absolute freedom, free association, or where you bring out the important bits to help a debate, I can understand that. That's the theatrical in me speaking. No. Everybody deserves a voice, no matter how repellent that may be. You know, and when we started this show, we both took a risk because we both really believed in free thoughts and open minds. Just because I'm saying I don't personally believe the antics of most of these young people, right or left, when they're running up and down streets and beating each other up and shouting slogans. You know, for me, is that really where the debate is at the minute, or is it a bit of fun at the weekend? You know, if they want to prove me wrong and come on the show, I'd love that. The trouble is, at the end of the day, the old cynic in me thinks we'll probably.
Well, as Russ said, I mean, a lot Antifa has been funded by a lot of people like Soros and stuff, and I think it's an easy way to create to dampen free speech rather than use the police and corrupt the police force to do it. Let them do it, and it makes it that a lot of people, particularly on the right, that if you want to go out and have a protest and speak your mind and express yourselves like everyone else does, you're going to have a bunch of people with knuckle dusters and this and that, or bottles throwing at you, and it brings down numbers, and it's not good, because people will start to react, and then you're just going to there won't be any protests. It will just be riots. There's a riot going on here and riot. And ultimately, free speech is attack them. You know, it's a difficult thing. And I mean, this is another show, isn't it? We've got to wrap it up. We've got to wrap it up now. But the point I was making is as much as everyone's got their political ideologies, you've got to be fair, and sometimes you've got to separate the idiots to the people that I believe we had on today have a bit of intellect, common sense, and genuine views and opinions that should be heard.
Well, Paul, I always like finishing on an upbeat note. Do you know, but I've got to say something that concerns me a lot. If we're not careful, we'll all be in the same prison cell as the forces of this type of globalization that brook no discussion, no debate at all, are finally, imprisoning all of us. It's a very, very dangerous time, and we all need to be a lot more vigilant.
And that just reminded me of why I'm glad that you're back with us, Mr. Parry. And there is where we're going to wrap it up. Thanks everyone for tuning in again here onto THA Talks. Please keep telling your friends about the show, keep linking the show, more importantly, keep downloading the show. We're going to be back very soon with some more wonderful discussion and some really cool guests. And as we unfold the show into the summer, which is approaching us now. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, be brave, be strong, keep doing your thing, and we'll be speaking with you really soon. Take care. Bye.
How's it going?